Hey guys, welcome to the AI Automation Alchemist Podcast. This is Rey Ortega, your host, and I am glad to be on today because I'm going to be talking about a very busy and very active day that I had today. Some of you guys are watching me right now on the screen, and you probably see a really tired Rey right now. It's really because I went to this thing called BizFest, and It was created by the Space Coast here in Florida, which is over by Cape Canaveral. They have a SCORE chapter. That SCORE chapter put on this event for business owners to come in and learn about all different things about business and listen to a bunch of speakers. I happen to be one of the speakers. So I did my presentation. I taught, spoke, connected with other business owners, talked about artificial intelligence, struggles that they're having with artificial intelligence, and learned a lot. I learned a lot today. But this podcast is covering a whole multitude of things, but a lot of it is basically off of that BizFest. And I just wanted to give a not only update, but also tell you what's going on in the industry, what's happening, what are the thoughts that are coming. And there's a certain part of this event today that was a Q&A, and I think it opened up some really good conversation. And so I hope in this podcast I could level you up on some things that are going on with artificial intelligence and how you can level up yourself in artificial intelligence. All right. So let's get this podcast started. Let's go.
The most real and relevant resource on AI and automation. AI Automation Alchemist Podcast. Sponsored by Grata Software.
All right, guys. So welcome again. This is Rey from the AI Automation Alchemist. Sometimes I have to pause because I have a hard time saying that whole phrase. However, I did a whole test with people before I even built the podcast, and they were like, "Oh, I really like that name," so that's why I kept it. And I know it's I'm digressing here, but let me talk about one thing here. First of all, this whole podcast is sponsored by Grata Software. So Grata Software is a custom solution for small business automation. What we focus on owners and operators, small business owners and entrepreneurs who are wearing many hats, find themselves really busy on a day-to-day basis, trying to work on their business. However, there's so much working in their business, they can't even get the things done they need in order to move the needle. So what we do is Grata Software is that we go in, we look at a business, we look at areas that are very repetitive tasks that are taking up too much time for the owner, their employees, their people, and we try to find a solution in order to automate those processes, whether we use artificial intelligence or not. We find ways that we can automate, streamline processes, reduce manual labor, and organize those processes to get more out of the business so that you can get more clients, get more business, make more money, essentially grow the company. And that's kind of the goal. And the key there is we're always building proprietary. So it's very customized solution for the specific customer. We don't copy and paste anything. And we don't throw random tools into the company to say, you just use all these tools and it'll work. No, we really test, tried and true test what we believe in and what works. So that's Grata Software. If just go to gratasoftware.com. And you'll see everything about the company. And just to give you an idea of some things that are automated is client follow-ups, intake forms, appointment reminders, lead routing, customer acquisition, basic customer communication, internal admin tasks, sales and marketing workflows, all of that stuff. So again, if you're spending hours every week doing the same thing, same task over and over again, you're not operating your business. You're inside your business, working your butt off, not able to strategize, talk to customers, build your company. This is the solution for you, Grata Software. Check it out. Again, gratasoftware.com. And if worst case scenario, you don't know much about Grata Software, just contact this guy right here. Because this guy, Rey Ortega, I am the CEO and founder of Grata Software, and this is my damn podcast. So that's it right there. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and talk about the BizFest conference. So this was the conference put on by Space Coast SCORE. If you don't know what SCORE is, I am actually a mentor at SCORE, but I'm in the Central Florida chapter, not the Space Coast chapter. And what SCORE is basically it's an organization. It's totally nonprofit, funded by federal dollars and state dollars to help small business owners who are kind of disadvantaged or don't have the means to purchase high-end consultants, and they still want a mentor and someone to help them with their business. That is what SCORE is. You go onto the website, you request a mentor. You can also watch videos and watch all these trainings on how to not only start a business, but how to manage your taxes, your cash flow, all that kind of stuff. And then if you need help on a more one-on-one basis, that's when you can request a mentor. And so that's how that works. Now, I am a mentor at SCORE, and I do provide free services at SCORE specifically, but that's my way of giving back. That is not my business model. I don't normally, have customers from SCORE, and vice versa. The customers that do business with me don't necessarily go to SCORE. They come to me because I'm highly skilled in what I do, and that's why they come to me. Okay. And so this BizFest, like I said, that was created by SCORE, but in the Space Coast region. So the whole purpose of it was to bring together business owners, entrepreneurs, local professionals, educators, service providers, and people trying to grow and modernize their business. The event brings in experts in specific fields. So my expertise is in artificial intelligence. I was brought in to speak on artificial intelligence, and I had a whole presentation that I provided. And most of the customers, or what I would say the audience at these events, are either small businesses that are either just starting or they are established, but they're still a very, very small business. They still haven't reached that stage that they're trying to grow. Or not trying to, but they just can't. They just don't have the resources yet. And then you have people that are just what we call entrepreneurs. And I don't mean that to be in any negative light, but these are people that want to become entrepreneurs, but just haven't been able to jump in, at least tip their foot in the water. They still haven't gotten there yet. They still need to get over that hump, that stress, the idea of owning your own business. And that's fine. But that's why they come to these events. That's what's awesome, is that they're trying to go there to find that inspiration that they need to say, all right, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start my business. And I love, that's why I love this organization. That's why I offered to volunteer and come in and do a presentation on artificial intelligence, specifically for the BizFest events. I do it for the Orlando chapter too, but this time it was a Space Coast chapter because I was requested. And so I did that. So strong collaborations between business owners. That's the one thing about this event. It's amazing. What I love about it is that most people are there to learn. I was actually really surprised at one thing. The group that I was speaking to, they were very well versed in certain aspects of marketing, and some of them artificial intelligence already. They were already using ChatGPT. They already knew some of the concepts. However, the thing about my presentation, I think that helped them out a lot, was some of those people have hit a wall, and I helped them get past that wall. I believe so, based on the feedback that I gotten. But it was a really good presentation, I think. And so everything we're talking about is very tactical. The presentations are tactical. It's things that we put into practice. It's not just theory; it's real stuff. How do I use this tool? How does this help my company? Where do I start? So all those kind of things. How it went for me, and I'm just going to say this: how it went for me. So I've done multiple speaking engagements on artificial intelligence. And every single time I do these presentations, I always run into this issue where some of you all know that follow me. I'm a software engineer by trade, been a software engineer for over 26 years, 27 years, 28 years, a long time. 1995, I built my first website. I managed a website in 1997 for my dean of students at the high school that I was at when I was a student assistant. And then I really jumped into GeoCities and started building websites, and then started building PHP applications, expanding my horizons as a software engineer eventually, all self-taught, using trainings, forums, online things that would help me understand how to do the work and how to get better at it. And so I did those things on my own. So I didn't go to college to learn software engineering or computer science. I learned all of that through trial and error. Building systems. I learned Linux, Unix on my own. I learned Windows servers on my own. So all that stuff. And when I say on my own, let's just be clear. I used blogs, forums. So people were training, people were teaching. Information marketing was a thing back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I took advantage of it. I remember for Flash, one of the technologies that I learned, there was a gentleman that had a forum. He was one of the top forums, and eventually he was hired by Adobe when Adobe took over Flash from Macromedia. And so that's how far back I go in this technology. It's back when Macromedia was around and Adobe bought them. And so when I'm talking at this conference and I'm doing my presentation, I'm coming from an angle of an engineer who's speaking to a bunch of business owners, which is fine because my degree is in business administration and management with a focus on entrepreneurship. So I do have the ability to speak to entrepreneurs about technology and how it works. But the problem is when you're highly technical and you're an engineer, it's hard to take the terminology and bring it to a level where a small business owner can understand it. So that was probably my biggest struggle. It's always my struggle. Every time I do a presentation, it's always my struggle. I luckily have some good people around me that kind of help me and walk me through some of that and review what I do and then kind of give me feedback. And I always try to work on it. I say kind of, but I work on it really hard. So I did. So this was another one of these presentations. Now, the one thing that got me about this event, and this is not to blast anyone, the event was amazing. The people were great. The hosts were great. I was kind of a little frustrated at the keynote. There's 2 keynote speakers that spoke at the beginning of the event, and they went over their time by 20 minutes, essentially. And then it took about 5 minutes for people to filter into the room that I was speaking in. So when they came in, I was already 25 minutes behind schedule. When I started speaking, I thought I was going to get my allotted 45 minutes. However, halfway through my presentation, I was given the 5-minute signal. And that 5-minute signal really rushed me to the where I couldn't really dig deep with the audience like I normally do. I normally do an interactive thing where I go back and forth with the audience. I couldn't do that. I had to basically hurry up and go through the rest of the presentation really quickly. And then the funny thing is I was on my last 2 slides and the guy came back in and said time. So I just had to show a QR code with a free offer that I had, and they took advantage of it. And yeah, obviously people scanned it. I get a notification every time someone scans the QR code because that's what you do in business. You keep track of everything, right? You want to make sure you're tracking everything that you're doing so that you can use that as analytics for the next thing that you do. And so I get a notification every single time someone scanned the QR code. So I had probably an 80% scan rate. Which means that 80% of the people that were in my presentation scanned it, which means they were interested in the information, number one. Number two, they were interested in the guide that I provided. I provided a full guide that was a prompt guide where it has over 100 prompts in all different aspects of a business. So it's sales, marketing, operations, even just emails, follow-up emails, all that kind of stuff. It had different sections to it, and it had a whole bunch of prompts that I had custom built. And in those prompts, there's placeholders, variables, things that with instruction so that they know how to fill in the information to get the best results when they're using AI. Because that was the purpose of it, right? The purpose of it was essentially a fundamental AI for small business. And that's kind of what it did. And I can give you a pretty quick rundown. I'll just review real quick with you what it was. So I gave basically a top 5 quick wins when you're using artificial intelligence. So the number one thing was how much faster you can write things with artificial intelligence. I showed them how to do an email sequence or how to save 15 to 20 minutes a day, and then hours, 1 to 4 hours a week, creating email marketing, creating, emailing your customers, follow-up emails, because there's different emails to different situations. So you send emails when you're following up with a customer. You send an email when you're trying to get a new prospect who's brand new, who doesn't know who you are. They're top of funnel. So all those kind of things, I kind of went through that process of, okay, these are the type of prompts that you can use to do that and get the good results. Now, that was the first quick win. The second quick win was, how do you use artificial intelligence to create your 90-second videos for social media, for Reels, YouTube Shorts, things like that. And then and obviously using Claude or using ChatGPT to help create your content, because not everything is a video. Video is king. That's the number one. You definitely want to have video when you're doing anything with social media right now with your business. You want to be able to use video because video is king. When they see who you are, it's like Grant Cardone says, if you ever follow Grant Cardone, he says, if they don't know you, they can't flow you, right? So they need to know who you are. And so having your face on camera is a huge benefit. It builds that trust and the credibility right off the bat. It kind of washes away any of those objections that you may have when it comes to, are you a valid company? Are you a trustworthy person? You can come across extremely trustworthy on video, where sometimes text doesn't provide that capability. Now, you can word things in a certain way. Now, that's the other part of it, right? You can use artificial intelligence to help you word things in a way, especially in social media when you're doing posted or text posts, or if you're doing an image carousel, you can use artificial intelligence to do that. One perfect example about image carousels, it's actually a video I saw from someone else, is they used a combination of Claude and Canva to create their visual slideshow, which will be the carousel post for Instagram. And so those things are, you could use AI for those things. Again, so that's quick win number 2. Quick win number 3 was the ability to create a full prompting guide. So I provided a prompting guide that has over 100 prompts. However, it was basically the steps on how to go through that prompting guide, copy paste the prompt, fill in the information about your business with product or services that you offer, and then the specific details about who you are, and then being able to get a result. If the result works, then you copy and paste that prompt that you just put in. You copy and paste that into a Google Doc or something like that. And then you create essentially your book of prompts. And these prompts are like a standard operating procedures for your own business. So I went over that. So that was quick win number 3. Quick win number 4 was being able to read contracts or agreements, whether it be agreements with a vendor, agreements with the government, agreements with anybody, being able to read those agreements a lot more efficiently and effectively and be able to create proposals and all of that stuff using artificial intelligence. I explained how you can use Claude and how I've used Claude in the past to, like when I do requests for proposals for the government, I usually take that whole request for proposal, I dump it into Claude. I just upload the whole thing as a file. And then my prompt is simple. It's go through this whole request for proposal. And I need 3 things for you to look at. Number 1, what are the stipulations of this contract? What are the stipulations of the contract that could either make or break us getting this deal, right? The second thing is like, what are the caveats that we're not paying attention to? What are the things that are absolutely are gotchas on this contract that could affect our business? And then the last one was something else. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But the one key component that I want to get across here, even for you guys that are listening right now, is all of that is great. But the one thing that is so important is you need to create a brand voice. And what I mean by brand voice is you need to be able to create a document, a text file that has everything about who you are, your business, all the services and products that your business offers. So what you do is, and what I told everyone there, if you don't have something already. So for instance, me personally, I have YouTube shorts, I have videos that I've already done, I have this podcast. I could take all of this, I can transcribe everything I've ever done and put into one document, and now that becomes my brand voice. And so when I'm doing a request for proposal, the AI will know how I speak, my cadence, my verbiage. So that's the contract part, right? So I have it read the contract. I use Claude because it's been trained on legal stuff. And so it does a really good job. So I tend to use Claude for that. I upload the stuff, like I said, and then it not only reads the proposal, the request for proposal, it gives me all the things I asked for, but then sometimes I'll have it write the actual proposal so I can send it to the government for the project. Now we've won a government contract doing that. So it's not something that's a pie in the sky, let's hope this works. It is something that has actually worked for us. So that's why I did it. And then what's the 5th one? So the 5th quick win, imaging and graphics. And so I talk about how you can use artificial intelligence in order to create imaging and graphics for not only your website, your landing pages, but also for avatars. For photos, my LinkedIn photo is completely an AI generated photo. I obviously uploaded my photo, and then my prompt was simply do not change my face and my body size. Only do what I asked. And what I asked it to do is put me in a nice tech-driven turtleneck type situation. Just make me look like a tech CEO, because I am a tech CEO. But I wanted to make me look like a tech CEO and put me in a nice, cool office. It's a tech office. But I specifically told it not to mess with my face, my facial features, and not to mess with my body type, because I think it's dumb, right? Like if I'm a 300-pound dude, like why should I have a picture of me at like 180 pounds if I've never been there? So, which I'm neither. So I'm a little under 300. So I'm just masking. I'm in the upper 200s. Yeah, there you go. I'm in the upper 200s. And so, but I have a pretty weird body type. And so I just told it, just keep the body type, because I just want, when someone goes see me in a presentation, I don't want them to go, wow, he's put on some weight. That's weird. That's weird. He's put on, man, he's not even put he's put a lot of weight on. You know what I mean? I don't want that to happen. So I want people to go with the exact representation of who I am. So I make sure that the AI does that accordingly. And if I look any other way, and by the way, I wear a hoodie. You know, a lot of times I wear a hoodie, but lately I've been wearing not a full suit. I've been doing the tech suit thing where like I wear polo, jeans, and sneakers, but then I have a jacket. It's been working so well, so I'm not going to go around. I'm not going to go away from that for now. But if you looked at all of my other photos, my real photos, by the way, real photographer photos, I'm wearing a hoodie mostly. My hair's slicked back because I'm Cuban, and I have that Cuban mafia hairstyle that you could comb straight back and it looks pretty cool. It looks kind of like Italian. It's just by sheer nature. I never had my hair like that. If you've been following me for a while or you've seen me in the past on a presentation like years ago, you'll notice that my hair has changed, and it hasn't really. It's just instead of combing it like down to the side, I comb it straight back. Now, what does that have to do with AI? It has nothing to do with AI. I'm just letting you know like what's going on. And so that was the 5 things. That was the 5 things that I talked about at the presentation. Now, this is the cool part. After my presentation was over, I was sitting in the back of the room listening to the next presenter that was after me. And then the host that was hosting the event came up to me and he says, hey, we have a roundtable discussion. I was already scheduled to be at a roundtable at like 1:30 p.m. And so he said, hey, we got this roundtable. However, on the sign-up sheet, you had a whole bunch of signups. You mostly had all the signups. To me, that was amazing because I didn't get a chance to do a Q&A in my actual presentation. So I thought that the perfect opportunity now to take that same audience, right, and do my Q&A, because I never had a chance to do that because they cut me short on when I was doing my presentation. So I thought that was really cool. However, it was supposed to be after lunch. So I go to lunch. I'm eating my lunch like everybody else. I'm sitting in another room because I'm actually doing work. I had to do pull requests. If anybody knows what pull request is when your developers develop something, and before we merge it into the main code base, they put out what's called a pull request. So we had about 25 pull requests because the team was smoking it this morning and building out a whole bunch of stuff for our client. And so I was just like, I wanted to help get the pull request through and merge the code into the code base. So I started looking at pull requests. So I'm there at lunch working on my pull requests on the phone simultaneously. By the way, that's my ADD. I do that. I can literally be on the phone talking to someone while doing work. And all of this in the midst of the fact that I know I have to present again in like 30 minutes. And so I'm sitting there and the guy comes in. He's like, hey, everyone's kind of finishing their lunch early. Why don't you go in there and start setting up for your round table? Now, I was under the impression in my head that I was going to be doing a round table, like what it means. Like you sit at a table, it's a round table, and you have like a flag up there that says Grata Software, whatever the name of the speaker is, and people show up and ask questions. That's what I thought. I thought that's what we were doing. However, as in the fashion of the whole event, that's not what we did. So I walked in the room while people were still sitting down, eating and talking. The gentleman who was hosting introduced me as if I'm doing a whole nother presentation and handed me a mic. And what was weird is that he was telling people, if you're not here for the AI roundtable, basically get out. Now, I jokingly followed up with what he said and kind of like did it in a funny way to kind of lighten the blow of saying get out, because it's really what I was saying. But in any fashion, I got the mic. I was asked to speak again. And however, the problem is that I thought the same audience that I had in the morning was going to be the same audience in the roundtable. They weren't. About 80% of them were, but there was about 20% that didn't even listen to my presentation in the morning. So I basically, the same rundown I just gave you guys on this podcast, I had to do that for them. And so I basically gave a rundown of what I talked about, got to the end, and I was like, okay, questions. Open up for questions. And I want to tell you, that was probably the best part to me, because the questions weren't the basics. The first question I got was agentic AI question. It was about a lady I say lady, she's a girl, she's young. She's in, I want to say staffing. She was in staffing, and they're already doing really good on AI stuff. They're already automating a lot of stuff. So there's not much in there from the automation side, but the one thing she had an issue with is her agents. Her agents are not working well. So when she said that, I was like, yeah, there's a reason why I didn't talk about agents in my presentation, because that is a far more complex conversation. And some of you guys are going to find that out as you're listening to the podcast. If you're watching this on any of my other channels, you'll probably run into some of these agent conversations get really complex, because a lot of people don't know what agents are and how they operate. And so agents, I had to explain that agents are just a file. Agents just need 2 things: instruction and a trigger. And so you can trigger an agent with what's called a cron job in Unix or Linux, or you can trigger an agent using a task scheduler, right? Or you could trigger an agent via code and executable. And then all it needs is instruction and what it's supposed to do, right? What's the instruction of what it's supposed to do? Because what it does is the agent uses that instruction and just goes and hits an LLM anyways. So when you instantiate an agent, you basically trigger the agent to take its skills or whatever it's in its MD file, which is the text file, and then it just applies that into an LLM, and the LLM replies back with a response. And that response gets essentially taken back up the chain to who made the initial request. It's essentially like having multiple chat GPTs just operating on your behalf, but all of them have to be triggered somehow, whether they're triggered by a webhook, or they're triggered by an executable, or they're triggered by a task, or they're triggered by a cron job. Like all of those types of things that's all it is. The heartbeat if you ever paid attention to OpenClaw, there's a heartbeat, right? They're like, oh, OpenClaw my agent automatically checks my emails every morning. And so they use a thing called a heartbeat. The heartbeat is a cron job. It's a cron job that fires an executable to go do something. That's all that is. So that's what agents are. So I had to explain that in a very simple way, which I tried to. I explained automation using agents, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the questions were along the realm of agents and automation, which I thought was awesome. They were in-depth questions. I got really technical. I was able to flex on the technical side, which is usually something that normally doesn't happen in some of these events because the people are just non-technical and they have a hard time following. But in this one, several engineers were in the room that worked for NASA, Lockheed Martin, or any one of those major contractors. So they understood what I was saying. And a lot of them had their wives with them. And so they understood what was going on too. So it was actually very interesting because I didn't get bland looks. I got a bunch of people nodding their head saying, yeah, he's right. Yeah, he's right. So it was actually pretty cool. Great validation, especially from the people that already knew a lot because they were engineers themselves. And some of the trials, tribulations, issues that I mentioned nailed a lot of the people that weren't necessarily engineers or architects or anything, but they were people that are already using AI and were running into the very things that I was saying is going to happen or is happening. So there was a lot of validation in that. And I just say that to say that it's not for me personally, like, oh, I just want credit because I'm good and I know what I'm doing and people believe me. It's because the fact of sometimes it's good to know that like what I'm seeing, hearing, what I'm experiencing, other people are experiencing. And it's great feedback to know that those people feel the same way. And that's just what makes a great presentation, the interaction, knowing that what you're talking about is actually is something that's been experienced by the people you're talking to. It just adds more credibility and validity to what you're doing. But it also makes you feel a lot better because you're like, okay, I'm not crazy. This stuff is really happening. Right. And so, but that's the thing. And I want to hit this point. Even with all of the AI training and the online content available, that agentic AI stuff, people are still confused about. So even after I explained a lot of it, I asked that same girl, I said, hey, so did I answer your question? And she's like, I still need to train on it. I'm still not grasping the concept. And I understand that because it's a very complex concept. So again, the presentation was geared more towards someone who's starting out with AI, giving them some feels about using AI in a positive way. But at the end of the day, it does get more complex. And this is not new, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, when WordPress, which was supposed to be the answer or the end all be all answer to people building websites so that you don't have to hire a web developer, a web designer, when that came out, everyone went gung ho on WordPress thinking the same thing. I'm never going to need a designer or developer or anything like that in the future. And what ended up happening is when the engineers got a hold of WordPress, they started adding all these custom features, custom themes. They started adding plugins so that you could be able to do even more custom themes. And ultimately, it got complex. And when it gets complex, the same people that were like, I don't need those developers anymore, call the developers back because they're like, I need help. I hit a wall. I can't get past this point because I don't understand what this thing is doing. I mean, we're running through the same thing already with artificial intelligence. So it's nothing new. There's been a cycle in the tech industry for many years. You're going to keep experiencing it throughout your life until the day you die. It's just the way it is. All right. So that's why I don't even pay attention to the hype when I go on social media because I know I'm old enough to know I've been through a few of these cycles already. So I know what's going to happen. People, in fact, there is a whole psychological study on this. And it's where people, when they first learn something, they automatically think they're now an expert and they know more than anybody else. They get all excited. They think that, oh, this is the change that we're going to see in my life. I'm going to now be the guru in this specific topic. And then when there's actually in the framework, it's called Mount Stupid. You hit Mount Stupid where you think you know everything, but you don't know anything. And then when you run into a wall, you run into that wall, you get massively humbled. And what people do is they completely go down the depression. The downward slope is the depression side. Now they feel like they don't know anything, like they completely falsely believed in themselves. And so they get that depression, it goes all the way down. And then finally they get out of that depression by realizing, look, I may not know everything, but I can figure out some of it. And they also get to that mentality of when the next person says, I'm the God that knows everything, they laugh and say, yeah, I've been there and done that, bro. Like, you don't, like, trust me, you're going to hit that wall too. Right. And so that's what happens. People get out of that dip and back into like normalization where they're just normal. And so that's what happens all the time. There's a whole study based on that. The other thing we talked about, by the way, I got a lot of questions about the AI replacing people, which I gave my personal opinion. There's no fact here. There's no study or anything. My personal opinion, and this is just a logical opinion, is it makes no sense when the focus is about using artificial intelligence to replace human beings who are doing work. The reason why is because it doesn't bode well for the economy. If nobody has money because nobody has a job, like who's spending money on products and services at that point? There's no money, right? So that's just an obvious logical thing. The other thing is all of us who are engineering in the AI space, who are physically have engineered the AI itself, the machine learning models and the neural networks that run in the background. There's no 100%. We've never hit 100%. We've hit 98%, 99%. And some people may say, well, that's almost like 100%. It's perfect. No, because in the areas that it doesn't hit 100%, that 1% or 2% that it's off tends to be in the most critical area. And so it creates havoc. And so you can't really rely on that. And so there's always going to be a human in the loop, in my opinion. We'll never hit a point where a human is not involved. Just because it's just not logically possible. And if you think I'm wrong, just go in the chat. Tell me why. I would love to hear why. All right. And so that's it. One of the major lines that I talked about was, AI may not replace you directly, but someone using AI effectively might outpace you. Now, obviously, you've heard that a million times. Everyone says that. If you go online everywhere, it says, AI won't replace you, but someone who's using AI will replace you, right? Everyone says that same line. It's so manufactured at this point. Every AI bot says that. Every response in ChatGPT says that. It's just a going line right now. But it's effectively true, right? Someone who's leveraging AI, learning it, and establishing really good skills in artificial intelligence is going to take over. Is going to be doing the jobs of people who just don't want to do it, right? They don't believe in it. They don't want to give it a try or whatever. They're going to run into major issues. That's always going to be a problem. Anyways, so beyond that, one of the things I talk about in every presentation is I call it the train track theory. And it's not necessarily a theory, it's an absolute fact. So what I do is I always ask the audience, I say, okay, how many of you all played Monopoly? How many of you all played Monopoly? All right, so Monopoly, there's 4 railroads. There's a good chance if you can own those 4 railroads that you're probably going to either win the game or you're going to make it all the way to the end, as far as possible to the end. The reason why is because the railroads, everyone has to hit them. There's 4 of them on each side of the game. There's a high probability that you're going to hit a railroad, right? And if you own all 4, you're great. And what I try to explain is that right now, artificial intelligence is a bunch of railroad tracks. And those railroad tracks are owned by Anthropic, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, and X. Now, Meta's in there, but Meta uses Manus, and Manus is Chinese. And actually, just recently, it was said that the Chinese are forcing a divestiture of Manus off of Facebook. So they're saying that, so Facebook never really bought Manus. They were in the talks to buy them. They started the process to buy them. They included them in their Facebook platform. So when you go to Facebook, you see, and Manus is great. It's expensive, but it's great. However, it's still a Chinese product, and China didn't approve the purchase yet. In fact, China reversed the approval of the purchase, telling the people, the CEOs of Manus, that they now have to separate themselves from Facebook. So that remains to be seen. But again, Facebook doesn't own a train track. What I mean by train track is a model that they sell to the general public. They don't own it. Anthropic does with Claude. OpenAI does with ChatGPT. Microsoft has Copilot, which is like a bleh, crappy, but it's still there, right? X has their own XAI. They have their own stuff, right? And so all of those guys are the train tracks, right? They're the models. They're the multi-million-dollar fully trained models. And every 6 months they come out with another model that's more advanced, right? So they've already done all the work to build the models. That's why they own the train tracks. Everybody else is just building a train on their tracks. When you're building a product that wraps a GPT or wraps the Claude API or whatever, you're just building another train on their tracks. And so that's why Anthropic lately, they keep dropping new features that are killing thousands of businesses, because all those businesses that use their train track are exposing themselves to Anthropic, and Anthropic looks at that and says, oh, look how many people signed up for that product. Why don't we just add it to our feature set? And then what they do is they just smack the freaking train off their track, which are the people that already built their train on the track. So that's how that works. That is how it works in business. Facebook did it in social media. Let's be straightforward. Facebook did that on social media. Facebook was one of the first social media platforms, if not the only at first, to allow you to use their authentication system for your application. So what happens is they got firsthand account of how many users were downloading your application or your app on the App Store and seeing who was logging in. They could see the numbers. And so when there was an app out there that had a feature that Facebook didn't have, they tried to acquire the app first. They would always make an offer to the owners of the app, but it was always a lowball offer or an offer that just didn't make any sense to them. And so when the people that own the app says, no, we're going to continue going our path, Facebook says, okay, we just build the feature inside of Facebook, and then we just killed your app. So this has been an ongoing thing in the tech world. It's always happened that way. It's nothing new. It's already expected by anyone who's building in the tech. That's why if you ever talk to an investor, whether it be a venture capital or angel investor, you always hear the word moat. What is the moat? What is the thing that cannot be replicated, stolen, replicated or stolen that you've built that provides you that absolute intellectual property valuation that is worth the investment? And so that's the key. And so that's the thing about all these people building wrappers for AI. They're essentially not building a moat, so all of the train track owners can absolutely change. There's a reason why. Perfect example. I use Cursor for programming, and Cursor allows me to switch whatever model I want. So I usually use Claude Sonnet 4.6 thinking, or I use Opus 4.7. The Cursor has built their own model called Composer that's built into their system, and it's essentially all the times that we've been using Cursor, it's been learning off of all the models that we were using to code to build the Composer model. Now, the Composer model is Cursor building their own train track. And that's what adds the amount of value to them. And that's the reason I believe why X, or what's called SpaceX, is making a play to buy Cursor. Because if they buy Cursor, they own another train track. They own a better train track for the coding side. Because X itself, they own a train track that's for the generic large language model, which is Grok. But if they buy Cursor, which they are making an offer to buy Cursor, is they can now own the coding side, because it's a far more advanced coding model than all the other systems out there. And just because every Cursor user is not only programming, but they're using different models, so they're getting all the different results, and all those different results are being fed back into the Cursor's Composer model. And that's how Composer operates. So really quick, I just want to mention all the stuff that I'm talking about that you're hearing, all the nuances of AI and train tracks and everything. If this is something that you're trying to establish or understand what this all means, if you're trying to get into the game of building artificial intelligence, using artificial intelligence for your small business, or if you're already an established business, you're looking at growing, you're looking at implementing artificial intelligence, but you don't really need someone to build it for you. What you need is you need to understand it. You need knowledge, you need comprehension. On top of that, if you're a small business and you're sitting there trying to figure out, okay, how do I use artificial intelligence to get more sales, drive more customers, all that kind of stuff? Ladies and gentlemen, that's why we've created the Digital Strike program. So Digital Strike, if you go to godigitalstrike.com, that is a new venture that we put together. It's an offshoot of Grata Software. It's built specifically for the small business owner. It doesn't necessarily have the ability to pay $20,000, $50,000 a month or whatever for a custom build of artificial intelligence. They just need to be guided where to go. What do I need to do in order to create my artificial intelligence solutions for my business? That is what Digital Strike is. So just go to godigitalstrike.com, go on there. there's an option to meet with us, contact us, and we look forward to helping you. It is strictly consulting, training. There is no custom development there. That is strictly for if you want to do it yourself or you want to do it with us or want us to do it with you. That would be the perfect brand for you. It's called Digital Strike. And there's a lot of materials. We have a Facebook group. So if you go to Facebook and you type in Digital Strike, you will see our Digital Strike group. So go to the AI Automation Alchemist podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or you can go on YouTube under the Grata Software channel, and the podcast is on there. Okay, and the last thing that I want to talk about before I close out this podcast is I want to talk about where we're going to be in the next couple of days. So there's an event called LATAM, LATAM. It's Latin American. It's basically an event that brings in companies from foreign countries, Mexico, Chile, Venezuela, I think, maybe Colombia, all these countries, brings them into the U.S. and U.S. companies act as delegates for the United States in a specific field. So, for instance, mine would be artificial intelligence for companies that are looking to expand into the U.S. from Latin American countries, called LATAM. So we will be at a LATAM event this week, and we will be representing the United States as a delegate on artificial intelligence for businesses that are looking to move their technology to the US or doing some things with the US. And so because I'm Cuban, I'm Hispanic-owned business, I actually speak Spanish fluently, conversationally, not technically. I just realized that I really suck at technical conversation in Spanish because I don't actually know the words for a lot of the technology that we have. So that's pretty weird. Conversationally, I'm very fluent in Spanish. That was my second language, but still very fluent in Spanish. And so I'm going to be a delegate. I'm going to be a delegate. Grata Software is going to be a delegate for these companies to help them incorporate customized AI solutions that are going to be on over here in the U.S. And so we're going to be helping some foreign Latin American countries basically do business in the U.S., which will help hopefully create jobs because they're looking at building things here and having offices here and employees here. So that's going to be really fun. I can't wait to do that. I'm speaking to 8 companies. Yeah, I'm speaking to 8 companies, and every single one of these companies is either part of tech or has something in tech, but they just don't have a foothold here in America. They just don't have the resources. So they're looking for partnering with companies like myself to be able to do work here. So that's cool because it might give us a chance to hire engineers and stuff like that to work with them. So that'd be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think I covered the Facebook group. I think we're pretty good. I think that's basically everything on this podcast that I want to talk about. This episode was definitely inspired by the events today. And I look forward to more events that happen in the future. Again, subscribe to the podcast. If you have any comments, questions on anything we talked about, just put them in the comment section, especially if you're like on YouTube or if you're on any one of our channels that allows you to comment. If not, send me a DM, I guess. I'm on TikTok. You can see me on TikTok at v.rey, Ortega, Ortega. If you go to the.reyortega.com, you'll find me on TikTok and Instagram, and just send me a DM. But thank you for listening to this podcast and hearing my rant about my current day and also all the stuff about artificial intelligence that may be beneficial to you and your business. Again, if you have any questions, by the way, we are looking for podcast guests. If you're a business owner and you're digging into artificial intelligence and you're seeing some wins, some quick wins, we would love to have you on the show and talk about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And also to, just to learn more about who you are and why artificial intelligence is doing for you. What is it doing for you? And automation as well. Let's not forget that the podcast is also AI and automation, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but at the same time, they are not the same either, right? They are not. Automation sometimes isn't AI and AI isn't automation. They work in together sometimes, but they're not. You can have one without the other, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. And so just be wary of that automation is still a whole different thing than just artificial intelligence. Automation is a whole different thing than artificial intelligence. All right, guys, thanks a lot. And I will check you out in the next podcast. Later. Podcast.